Hello, everyone, and welcome to the English Learner Podcast. My name is Anna.
And I'm Tom. We're very happy that you are listening to our podcast today.
If you enjoy learning English with real conversations, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can follow all our future episodes.
That's right. Our goal is to help you improve your English step by step with practical topics and natural conversations.
Today, we have a very interesting and enjoyable topic for English learners.
Yes, today we are going to talk about learning English with stories.
Stories are one of the most enjoyable ways to learn a language. Many people remember stories better than grammar rules or vocabulary lists.
That's true. When you listen to or read a story, you don't just learn individual words, you learn how those words are used in real sentences and real situations.
For example, a story might show two friends meeting after a long time. Through their conversation, you can learn greetings, questions, and expressions used in daily life.
Stories also help learners understand the flow of English conversations. You can see how people start a conversation, continue it, and respond to each other.
Another reason stories are helpful is because they make learning more interesting. Instead of memorizing vocabulary, you are following characters and events.
Yes, when a story is interesting, learners naturally want to know what happens next. This curiosity helps them stay focused and motivated.
Stories also help learners imagine the situation.
For example, you might read a story about someone traveling to a new city.
In that story, the traveler might visit a cafe, talk to local people, or ask for directions.
Through the story, learners can discover many useful expressions used in everyday situations.
Another benefit of stories is that they help learners remember vocabulary more easily.
That's because words appear in context, not alone.
For example, instead of just learning the word restaurant, you might read a story where someone goes to a restaurant, reads the menu, orders food, and pays the bill.
When you see the word used in a situation like that, it becomes easier to understand and remember.
Stories can also improve listening skills when learners listen to them in audio form.
Many people enjoy listening to English stories while relaxing at home or traveling.
Listening to stories helps learners get used to the rhythm and sound of the English language.
Over time, this improves their ability to understand spoken English.
Another helpful activity is reading stories out loud.
Yes, reading aloud allows learners to practice pronunciation and speaking at the same time.
Even simple stories can provide many opportunities to practice speaking clearly.
Stories can be short and easy for beginners, or longer and more detailed for advanced learners.
The most important thing is to choose stories that match your level.
When the story is not too difficult, learning becomes more enjoyable and less stressful.
Many learners also enjoy discussing stories with friends or teachers.
Talking about a story helps learners practice sharing ideas and opinions in English.
In this way, stories help improve not only reading and listening, but also speaking and communication skills.
That's why learning English with stories is a very powerful and enjoyable method.
Another reason stories are helpful for learning English is that they make language learning feel natural. Instead of studying many grammar rules, learners see how English works inside a story.
That's a great point. When you follow a story, you learn how sentences are formed and how ideas connect with each other.
For example, a story might begin with a simple situation, like a person waking up in the morning.
Then the story continues with that person going to work, meeting friends, or solving a problem.
As the story develops, learners see how different sentences are used to describe actions, feelings, and events.
This helps learners understand how English is used in real communication.
Stories also introduce many everyday expressions that people use in normal conversations.
Yes, expressions like, "What's going on? That sounds great," or "Let's give it a try," often appear in stories.
When learners hear or read these expressions many times, they begin to understand them naturally.
Another advantage of stories is that they help learners think in English.
That's true. When you follow a story, you focus on understanding the meaning instead of translating every word into your first language.
Over time, this helps your brain process English faster.
Stories also create emotional connections.
Yes, when a story is funny, exciting, or surprising, learners remember it more easily.
For example, a funny story about two friends getting lost in a new city can help learners remember words related to travel and directions.
A story about cooking dinner with family can help learners learn food vocabulary and daily activities.
Another helpful activity is retelling the story in your own words.
That's a great exercise because it encourages speaking and creativity.
For example, after reading a story, you can try to explain what happened from the beginning to the end. You might say, first the character went to the market, then he met a friend, and later they had dinner together. This type of practice helps learners build confidence when speaking English. Some learners also like to write their own short stories. Yes, writing stories allows learners to use their imagination while practicing vocabulary and grammar. Even a very simple story with a few sentences can be a great learning exercise. For example, a learner might write a short story about a weekend trip or a visit to a cafe. Over time, these small writing activities help improve writing skills and creativity. Stories can also introduce learners to different cultures and lifestyles. Yes, stories from different countries show how people live, work, and communicate. This makes language learning more interesting because learners also learn about the world. In many ways, stories make learning English feel less like studying and more like enjoying a good book or conversation. And when learners enjoy the process, they are more likely to continue practicing and improving. That's why stories are such a powerful and enjoyable tool for learning English.
One of the best ways to learn English with stories is by starting with short and simple stories. Short stories are easier to understand and help learners focus on the main idea.
That's true. When a story is simple, learners can enjoy it without feeling overwhelmed by too many difficult words.
Many English learners begin with stories that describe everyday situations.
For example, a story might talk about someone going to the supermarket, visiting a friend, or preparing dinner at home.
These situations are easy to imagine because they are part of daily life. When learners recognize the situation, it becomes easier to understand the vocabulary.
When learners recognize the situation, it becomes easier to understand the vocabulary.
Another useful technique is reading the story slowly and carefully.
Yes, there is no need to rush. Learners can take their time to understand each sentence.
If a word is difficult, they can try to guess the meaning from the context of the story.
This is a very important skill because in real conversations, we often understand meaning from context.
Some learners also like to read the story more than once.
That's a great idea because the first time you read, you understand the general idea.
The second or third time you read, you begin to notice new vocabulary and expressions.
Repetition helps the brain remember the words more easily.
Another helpful activity is listening to the story while reading the text.
Yes, this allows learners to see the words and hear the pronunciation at the same time.
Listening and reading together can improve both comprehension and pronunciation.
Some learners even pause the audio and repeat the sentences aloud.
This helps them practice speaking and sounding more natural.
Another fun way to learn with stories is acting them out.
That's right. If a story has two characters, learners can read the dialogue like a small play.
One person can read one character and another person can read the other character.
This makes learning more interactive and enjoyable.
Stories can also help learners build their vocabulary step by step.
For example, a story about cooking may introduce words like ingredients, recipe, kitchen, and stove.
When these words appear in the story, learners understand how they are used.
Another advantage of stories is that they show how sentences connect with each other.
Yes, words like then, after that, later, and finally often appear in stories.
These words help learners understand the order of events.
They are also useful when learners want to tell their own stories.
Many teachers use stories in the classroom for this reason.
Students listen to a story, discuss it, and sometimes write their own ending.
This type of activity encourages creativity and communication.
It also helps learners feel more confident using English.
Another tip is to underline or highlight new words while reading a story.
Yes, and learners can write the meaning in a notebook to review later.
Some learners like to make flashcards with the new words from stories.
Flashcards can be very useful for memorizing vocabulary in a fun and organized way.
Another technique is to summarize the story in your own words.
For example, after reading, you might say, the character went to the market, bought fruits, and met a friend.
Summarizing helps learners remember the story and practice speaking at the same time.
You can also discuss the story with friends or teachers.
Yes, talking about the story helps you practice expressing your thoughts in English.
Another fun activity is predicting what might happen next in the story.
This encourages critical thinking and imagination while practicing English.
Some learners even try to change the ending of the story.
That's a creative way to use the vocabulary and expressions they learned.
Over time, reading and listening to stories helps learners improve reading, listening, speaking, and writing skills.
And the best part is that learning with stories is enjoyable, so it doesn't feel like studying.
That's why stories are such a powerful tool for improving English naturally and effectively.
Another great way to learn English with stories is by choosing stories that match your level. Beginners should start with simple stories, while more advanced learners can read longer and more detailed stories.
Yes, starting with simple stories helps learners understand the main idea without getting lost in difficult vocabulary.
As learners improve, they can try intermediate stories with more complex sentences and new expressions.
Reading stories at the right level keeps learners motivated and confident.
Another tip is to read stories aloud. This helps improve pronunciation and speaking skills.
Some learners also record themselves reading the story and then listen to their own pronunciation.
This is very useful because it allows learners to notice mistakes and correct them.
Another helpful activity is to answer questions about the story.
For example, after reading, you might ask yourself, what happened first? Or why did the character do that?
This helps learners practice comprehension and thinking in English.
Learners can also write short summaries of the story in their own words.
Writing summaries is a great way to practice grammar and sentence structure while remembering the story.
Another method is acting out the story with friends or classmates.
Yes, reading dialogues aloud and acting as characters makes learning interactive and fun.
This technique also helps learners remember vocabulary and expressions naturally.
Another tip is to underline or highlight new words while reading the story.
Then you can make flashcards or write the words in a notebook to review later.
Another way to practice is to retell the story from a different character's point of view.
For example, if the story is about a traveler visiting a city, you can retell it as if you are the traveler.
This encourages creativity and helps learners use English actively.
Listening to audio versions of stories is also very helpful.
Yes, hearing the correct pronunciation and intonation improves listening skills.
Some learners like to pause the audio and repeat sentences aloud to practice speaking.
Another fun technique is predicting what might happen next in the story.
This keeps learners engaged and improves their thinking skills in English.
You can also discuss the story with friends or teachers.
Talking about the story allows learners to practice expressing opinions and ideas naturally.
Another idea is to combine reading and drawing.
For example, learners can draw pictures of the characters or events while reading the story.
This helps with memory and makes learning more fun.
Finally, learners can try writing their own stories using vocabulary and expressions learned from the story.
Writing your own story is a creative way to use English actively and practice all the skills: reading, writing, speaking, and listening.
When learners use these techniques, stories become a powerful tool to improve English naturally and enjoyably.
Another useful tip for learning English with stories is to always review the new words and expressions you find. Writing them down in a notebook or making flashcards helps you remember them better.
That's very practical. You can also try using the new words in your own sentences or conversations to practice them actively.
Repeating the story, listening to it again, or acting it out can also help reinforce vocabulary and grammar.
Yes, and discussing the story with friends, classmates, or teachers can improve your speaking and comprehension skills.
Another helpful idea is to summarize the story in your own words, either by speaking or writing. This helps you remember the main points and practice your English.
Learners can also try changing the ending of the story or creating a new version. This encourages creativity and allows you to use what you have learned in a fun way.
Stories are not just for reading, they're a tool for practicing listening, speaking, reading, and writing all at once.
Over time, using stories regularly will help learners build confidence and fluency in English naturally.
Another tip is to focus on the expressions and phrases used by the characters. These often reflect how people really speak in everyday situations.
That's right. Expressions like, "I can't believe it," or "What should I do?" are very common in daily conversations and help learners sound more natural.
Learners can also make a small diary or journal, writing down what they learned from each story.
Yes, this is a great way to track your progress and review vocabulary and expressions regularly.
Another activity is to try telling the story to someone else in English.
Teaching or retelling a story helps you practice speaking, improve memory, and gain confidence.
You can also combine listening, reading, and writing by listening to a story, reading the text, and then writing a short summary.
Some learners even illustrate the story by drawing pictures of the characters or events. This makes learning fun and memorable.
Stories can also inspire learners to create their own mini-stories using new vocabulary and grammar.
Yes, writing your own stories allows you to practice English creatively while using words and expressions you learned.
Over time, these techniques make learning with stories enjoyable, effective, and natural.
Thank you so much for listening to the English Learner Podcast. We hope today's tips on learning English with stories help you practice all 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you won't miss future episodes, and share this podcast with your friends who want to improve their English.
Keep practicing English every day. Enjoy learning with stories, and remember that small steps lead to big improvements.
Happy learning, everyone! Use stories in your daily life to improve your English naturally and confidently.
See you in the next episode, and don't forget, every story is a chance to learn something new.
Keep reading, listening, speaking, and writing in English, and enjoy the process of learning.